This week, the podcast is brought to you in association with Manscaped, who've recently released their Performance Package, which is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Included in this package is the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, which is waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. The nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology which helps prevent nicks, snags and tugs. And if you're anything like me, you'll realise how painful it is to pull out a nose hair, and will certainly appreciate the delicate manner in which this performs. The bundle also includes the Lawn Mower 3.0 trimmer that we talked about on last week's show, which has to be the best trimmer on the market. And if you order the package, you will also receive the Manscaped boxers and the Shed travel bag. Not only that, you will also receive a replaceable blade every 3 months to keep your weed whacking and lawn mowing time clean and enjoyable. Get 20% off and free delivery with the code Wisden at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free delivery at manscaped.com using the code Wisden. Anyway, I think we should get on with the show. New Zealand are the first ever winners of the World Test Championship. They overcame India and the weather to win that global title they've come so close to in recent years. We'll be talking about that, the women's test at Bristol, perhaps the lowest key home England men's international ever, the latest action from the Blast and the Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy, as well as the West Indies South Africa test. We've also got pre-recorded interviews with England newbie George Garton and young English quick Izzy Wong. I'm Yas Rana, and to get through all of that with me is former England batsman Mark Butcher, the magazine editor of Wisden Cricket Monthly Joe Harman, and features editor of Wisden.com Taha. Hashim, welcome to the show, everyone. Good to see you all. A word of warning, I had my first jab earlier today, and I've been told my side effects, if I do get them, will kick in about now. So let's see how
Who's
this
in
goes.
Charge of you collapse, Yas? Who's your deputy?
Well, you're the closest one to me, so I think you take over if I
all
collapse.
Right, good to know.
Good. Let's go into this. Joe, New Zealand are World Test champions. That sounds great. A brilliant Test match and just fully deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like a lot of people, I looked at the forecast and thought, oh no, this thing's just not going to play out at all as we want. But then slowly but surely, over what seemed like a very long 6 days with all the rain breaks, we got this fantastic match that developed. And credit to both sides for allowing it to develop in that way. And it ended up being actually quite a special emotional moment yesterday when Ross Taylor hit the winning runs, and it felt a very fitting finale for lots of reasons. I think New Zealand were absolutely deserved winners of a World Test Championship that had been messy at points. It didn't like we might even reach the finish at one stage, but for New Zealand to win it was absolutely right. That Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor, who have suffered a lot of close defeats and a lot of hammerings with New Zealand over the years, for them to be there right at the end was also fitting. BJ Watling's send-off, and that Cole Jamieson was man of the match in the final, having been the player of the tournament effectively, getting Kohli out twice, looking unplayable at times. It was a lovely moment, and it was great that there was a kind of small section of New Zealand fans in there that could whip their shirts off and celebrate in style as the winning runs were hit.
Taha, you thought that New Zealand's reaction at the end was quite telling.
Well, when we got to those last 20 minutes, it's kind of like, New Zealand are going to win this. Williamson and Taylor were going fine. It was just a matter of when now. And I was really interested for those last 20 minutes just to see how Williamson would react, because he's this steely guy who doesn't give anything away. He's pretty unreadable. When they lost the World Cup final 2 years ago, I mean, he was just you couldn't see what was happening in his brain, basically. And he that's the happiest I've ever seen him when those hitting runs were here. And this is a tournament that's been talked about with having so many flaws with the point system and whatever. It's been it's been put through the ringer by people. And at the end of the day, it got something right. It got two of the best test teams of the world, I think, two of the best test squads in the world together for one final. And when you see the way Williamson reacted, when you see the way the New Zealand team reacted, that's not how you celebrate when you win just a bilateral series. That's when you've been told you're a world champion. And so at the end of the day, we got there in the end after all that rain, after 2 years of, quite hefty criticism. We got a tournament that provided context to the world test game, and show that there's something here to be built upon. There's still a lot of things that need ironing out, but at the end of the day, the the simple concept of having a world champion in Test cricket is something that's meaningful and something to be celebrated.
At the end of the day, we had a deserving winner, and we wanted context in Test cricket, and that's exactly what we got. But what stood out for you in New Zealand's win, not just in the Test match itself, but their kind of journey over quite a long time, where they've just progressively become slowly better and better to arguably the best side of the world?
What are we talking about? What, being the worst side in the world? What, not so long ago? How many years ago was that now?
Well, they were 45 all out against Africa, not 8 years ago.
I think. Yeah.
8 years ago, yeah. Just sort of, arguably the best 50 over side in the world. The best Test team in the world. Some fabulous players. Some World 11 players, and a team that plays Test match cricket in the way that the best teams do. They're not always looking at the same place for contributions. They've got players who are unsung, who always get the job done for them. They've got 3 or 4 fellas who are stellar in terms of their performance, in terms of their consistency. Well led, well liked, all good. I guess Kane the Unscrutable. That's a nickname for him. It won't stick, but it's quite good. For me, the whole occasion, and I'm forgetting the rest of the World Test Championship because, face it, no one could follow it. No one had any idea. You kind of had an idea by the end that it was going to be fought out between, the big 3 plus New Zealand, and then it was just a case of who got to the final. But once the final was there, I loved it. The idea that every single dismissal, every single run eked out over the course of the 6 days in a there is no tomorrow Test match meant that it was the most heightened sort of contest between two teams in the long game that I can remember watching. Every single part of it was important. Every dismissal, and the players played it in that way. You could tell by the way that Williamson and Kohli guarded their wickets with their lives. It was kind of, the whole thing was on a knife edge for all the play that we got. And for me, that's the reason why that part of the World Test Championship is perfect. Best 2 teams, 1 game, 1 chance, play it over 6 days, play it until the death, if you like. It's at the Colosseum and keep going until they're dragging bodies off the field. And that is the way to decide it. It's not a 3-match series. It's not, best of 7. It's 1 test to the end, see who wins. And I loved it.
We shouldn't underestimate what this means to New Zealand and New Zealanders. My dad is a New Zealander, and he texted me moments after Ross Taylor hit the winning run saying, he just said, over the last 2 weeks, the wounds of 1955 have finally healed. Now, if you don't know what 1955 is, that was New Zealand were bowled out for 26 by England in a Test match at Eden Park. My dad would have been 9 at the time. And I think it's one of those sporting memories that really stays with you. I guess for me, it would be Gareth Southgate missing a penalty, Euro 96, that kind of thing. But to see New Zealand beat England comfortably on their own patch and then win the World Test Championship final was a really special thing for him and for a lot of New Zealanders. And actually, a couple of hours later, I got an email from my uncle in Auckland who recalled a Test match he watched between New Zealand and India at Eden Park in February 2014. And the first thing he pointed out, which I thought was quite interesting, 6 of the New Zealand team who played in the World Test Championship final played in the match 7.5 years ago. 7 of the Indian team as well, which kind of highlights how important continuity is if you're going to be a proper Test team. Now, this isn't England's moment. I don't want to drag England into this too much, but it's in contrast, isn't it, to what we've seen with England over the years. And the other thing that my uncle said of that match in 2014 was a new mentality that he saw from New Zealand, which has changed a bit from McCullum to Williamson. But I'll just read out what he said because it kind of summed up. He said, that test in 2014 he's talking about was interesting to watch because it was the first time I ever saw New Zealand really go for the win, and it was close. On the last afternoon with Dhoni taking command, it looked like India would win, but under McCullum, New Zealand just kept going for a win. It was a new kind of spirit with everyone in the team playing the game that way. And I think Williamson does it in a different way, but we've seen that winning team spirit continue over the last few years, to the point that it's actually, for us, quite hard to remember a poor New Zealand Test side. But my dad grew up with them losing every match, or certainly not winning matches. So to get to this point, we're in a country utterly dominated by rugby until the last few years, is really quite a special moment.
It's almost cliched to say that they're a really likeable side, and I think one of the reasons for that likeability is just the familiarity cricket fans have of them. They've had that core of seven or eight players really who've played most formats for a very long time now. But how important do you think the additions late in the day of Carl Jamieson and then Devon Conway made to that team? As Joe said, Jamieson is arguably the player of the tournament. But in that final as well, in a really low-scoring test match, Conway and Latham put on the biggest partnership of the test match against that India bowling attack, who bowled really, really well in the first innings. How important do you think those two players have been in taking that New Zealand team to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jamieson, there was some sort of conjecture as to who was going to end up being in the final 11, wasn't there? And I don't think there was ever any doubt that Jamieson wouldn't miss out. But the fact that they had so many players to choose from, potentially that would have made that final 11, tells you everything you need to know about the way that the squad's put together. But Jamieson is obviously high class, very, very fine bowler, and to get rid of Kohli twice in a game of this magnitude just shows you that. And Conway obviously is very, very, very short in the tooth in terms of Test match experience, but it's too early to say what he might become, and it's kind of pointless in a way. But what it does tell you is that there is a togetherness is not the right word. There is an ethic in terms of an all for one for all way that these guys are willing to play. That when they bring somebody in, they just slot in, no problem whatsoever. And if it means that they want him to go out there and blunt it for a day and a half, that's what he's going to do. There's no idea that somebody comes in and kind of does their own thing in this New Zealand side. It's all for the greater good. And so, I thought when we talked about this last week, New Zealand started off as favourites. They've been here. They played 2 Test matches. It's more their type of cricket in England. And of course, if you pick a team based on what you thought the weather forecast was going to be, as opposed to pick a team as opposed to what it might be, then India got it wrong in terms of their team selection. Not that I think it would have made an enormous amount of difference in the end. But it's a massive shame to me that the game was as interrupted by the weather and so beholden to the weather in terms of the seaming conditions, etc., as it was. However, somehow it still didn't diminish the contest because it was won by a team bowling the opposition out twice. In a game where it was time limited. You thought 6 days was going to be plenty, but in the end it came down to a race against the clock for New Zealand, and India couldn't quite live with the likes of Jamieson and Southee and Bolt. And Wagner, of course, who comes in and kind of when it looks as though they're flagging a little bit and lifts them off the floor. So, terrific, really, really terrific. I would have loved it if the game had been played out, because I still think that the surface had we had sort of 4 or 5 days of sunshine, that India's team would not have been a bad team. But those are the chances you take with the forecast. If you ignore the forecast and pick what you think your 11 is going to be for the ideal conditions, then you can end up coming unstuck.
And announce it 2 days before the start of the game. Before
Precisely. I mean, that's But there you go. I mean, it's and I've had no issue. Of course, had the game been in a neutral venue, but that neutral venue had been Bangladesh or something, then India would have been favourites to win it, and you would have been exactly the same way exalted for them for winning it, because they have been a fabulous team in this stretch as well, and there's absolutely no denying it, and there's no disgrace for them having lost to this New Zealand team in the UK.
So, Taha, do you think that India missed a trick there, playing the 2 spinners when they have had someone like Siraj waiting in the wings?
Well, I kind of feel with Jadeja, it's almost the sort of focus more on his batting than bowling when picking him here. I think to get the balance right, if you were going to take out Jadeja, you'd want a fast bowling all-rounder, and that's where someone like Hardik Pandya would come in for me. I'm not sure what his fitness situation is, but obviously he's not fit. Yeah, but he's someone who I still look to, and he's not played Test cricket since in his last tour here, and he's still someone I look to who could do a trick for them in that Test side. But I totally respected what India did in terms of thinking, right, one game, let's just pick your best team, because that is really like the team. If you're just thinking any conditions, I want, this is going to be that core 11, and they'll do a job. And I mean, just respect to New Zealand then.
I could not agree more. I mean, listen, if all things being equal, there was the right team.
Yeah.
All the, if if it hadn't have teed it down, if it hadn't
But-
lost
but
2
it- but it-
days,
but it
it
did
was
though.
the right team.
But it did though.
No,
And
but
they
you
named
don't
it-
know that. But nobody
also
knows
they
that.
didn't-
Nobody
they-
knows that. It's not like it isn't as though New Zealand kind of went. If the weather had been fine, New Zealand playing 5 seamers was ridiculous, right?
But New Zealand named their team on the day of the game starting.
That's ridiculous.
India
but I still,
had 24
but
hours.
I still don't think I get that. But on day 1, you can't know that day 4 is going to get washed out entirely, can you? No matter what you do.
Depends how much trust you place in the weather.
Precisely. That's my point. And we all do that at our peril. But it's kind of. I agree with Taha. It's entirely the fact they looked at it and went, the weather looks pretty shady, but the best team we can put on the park is this, and that's the balance of it. And there were occasions, weren't there, in the match where you just thought, Christ, if they could have just thrown the ball to another seamer. Mohamed Shami looked like he was on his knees. Bumrah didn't have the best test match for a man of his standards. He
That's what I was
kind
going
of
to say as well.
a little bit off the ball. But
wasn't at his
again,
best.
they'd just flown into the country. They'd not played any competitive cricket. New Zealand had played 2 test matches against England. They were ready, and India. So all in all, even if they got all of that stuff right, New Zealand was still favourites. It's
And
a
if
little
you-
bit
if you
like the
play-
whole thing about talking about the mistakes that England made with their selections in India or the pitches or whatever. Before the series started, India are winning that series against England. No matter what England did, they're winning it. I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says. They're winning that series. It might be by a margin of 2, might be a margin of 3, might be a margin of 4, but they're winning. And given everything that had gone on, New Zealand were favourites to win it, and they won it.
Yeah, and I think if you put Siraj in for Jadeja, that's a very long tail you're looking at there.
Yeah.
And in a low-scoring match, Jadeja easily could have played a match-changing innings. I mean, the highest score was 53 in the game?
Yeah, something like that.
If
Yeah.
Jadeja sticks around a bit long enough, then you kind of flip the whole thing on its head and say, well, of course he had to play because he scores such useful lower-order runs.
Virat Kohli said something quite interesting after the game. He said, I mean, this is very interesting given how slow the run rates were across the Test match. He thinks India should have taken the game more to New Zealand when India were batting, which is interesting because Kohli himself played the slowest innings of his Test career when he's scored more than 30 runs. Do any of you think there's merit in that thinking? That his argument was basically that in those conditions there was going to be a ball with your name on it, and it allowed bowlers like Jamieson, Southey, Bolt in particular to just kind of get into a rhythm.
Well, this is my entire point about the idea about it being one game, because you have to make that call in that game, in that moment. You can kind of look back at it in hindsight and think, well, if the situation comes up again in match 2, you can do that. If it's zacking around all over the place, you go, well, sod it, we'll have a go. But it's one game, so that's my point. Is that all of these things? None of it is hindsight. All of it is what are you doing in the moment? Are you, because you know that every single dismissal, every single wicket is potentially fatal in terms of the outcome of the Test match? Are you free enough in your mind and body to be able to go out and take that sort of risk? You're free enough to talk about it afterwards, but are you free enough to do it at the time? And it was obviously noticeable by the time it got to the point where they were desperate to score as many as they could, as quickly as they could, that Pant came out and did what he did, second dig. But to do that on day 2 or day 3, whenever it was, they were batting and it was zacking around all over the place and there were still 3.5 days left, that's some call to make, right?
Yeah, easier said than done, right? I mean, Rahane did try and take on Wagner, I mean, not in particularly assured way.
That's my moment of the week.
I mean, that was a terrible shot, wasn't it?
But
A very odd shot.
The broadcast team put a graphic of the field placement, the field change of that delivery, and literally highlighted the man who'd gone to square leg. Obviously, that wasn't put on the big screen because Rahane played the shot as if he didn't know the man was there.
India, we've been talking for the last month or so about sort of England batting woes and whatever, but half of that Indian batting lineup came to England with their last Test match averages in the very, very low 20s and some in the teens. So you're talking about a batting lineup itself that's kind of not in the flush of confidence. They're not. Rahane, shocker. Pujara, shocker. Kohli, shocker. In the England series, so none of them have sort of come over here bristling with sort of like I've been averaging 80 in the last 12 months or whatever, because they haven't.
New Zealand themselves batted pretty slowly in their
Really
slowly,
slowly, really slowly.
So, and I mean, Williamson really sort of took his time there, and then
Was it 5.5 hours for his 49? Was it
something like that?
So that was his slowest 40+ score ever as well. So 2 greats of the game played their slowest ever innings in this game.
Yeah, so I mean. Not necessarily a nice proactive innings from them, but they got it bang on, I guess, in the end.
Exactly. I thought it was quite interesting that this test followed a very similar kind of pattern to the 2 test match series that New Zealand won against India in New Zealand, in that low scoring test matches, but just the New Zealand guys who got in just kind of got those scores that just made a little bit more of a difference. In the end, actually, on paper, it looks like quite a comfortable victory.
And lower order runs as well.
Yeah,
Southey
exactly.
and Jameson, really crucial runs. And quick runs
which
as well.
India's 9, 10, 11 just don't really get at all, which is quite interesting. Kohli did say after the game he would have preferred a 3-test series and a one-off final. Taha, any thoughts on what you'd prefer to be the way to decide the winner of the tournament in the future editions?
I mean, I enjoy the final, and I'm not really sure how you're going to get the time to get that in the calendar. Something's got to give somewhere else, I guess.
We'll refer to your edition of Wisden Cricket Monthly to see how it should all play out.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of the one game.
Yeah,
Massive.
so am I.
Me too.
So am I. I thought
you do what you want up to that point, but that stays for
it's
me.
also just like it was a test match like unlike others you really see. What you
exactly.
said, like, it's so much riding on every moment of it. And also just like this is kind of a separate point, but the quality of bowling in that test match was just incredible. Like 10 bowlers who are all right on it all the way through. After the game, Joe, I was wondering how this New Zealand side, test side specifically, will be remembered. Obviously, the achievement of winning it, given the lack of resources they have, is incredible. But one thing that Kohli also said after the game that's quite interesting, what part of his argument about of a 3-match series is that longer series are more memorable. I think one of the things almost holding back how New Zealand will be remembered is that they don't actually get to play longer series. Like without this World Test Championship, they would almost not get the recognition that they're the best side in the world, because they're almost never going to get the opportunity to get a 3 or 4 test match series victory over the likes of India, Australia, ever, because they just don't get to. Do you think that's kind of fair, that they won't get those moments as much as other teams? They might literally never get the opportunity to show how good they can be over a 4-match series away to some of these teams.
Yeah, I think the number of matches is probably part of it. They also don't have a kind of marquee series in the same way as other countries, apart from Australia, who don't really kind of deign to play them very often, and have only just let them come over and play the Boxing Day Test. And actually, unfortunately, New Zealand haven't produced their best cricket at all. That was the kind of the one big blip in the World Test Championship cycle for them, that they just were all over the shop, got a bit unlucky with injuries, a couple of poor selections along the way as well. But I think there is also, they are just naturally going to slip under the radar, which is why this final is so important, because otherwise they can beat whoever they can beat even India in India. Over here, that wouldn't necessarily get that much traction. So I think you kind of need some silverware, a trophy to show at the end of it, to show how good you've been, which is why I'm so pleased that New Zealand have got that, because otherwise this kind of sequence of extremely good results over a few years could actually easily be forgotten.
Taha, we had a really good question in from one of our listeners called Stephen. He said, what do you think could have been some of the great World Test Championship final matchups of the past? He suggests early 2010s England versus South Africa. He says, I think the World Test Championship could be fantastic for giving teams something to show for short periods of dominance.
Yes, that's a really great question, and I was thinking about it, and I think Ian Bishop got asked this as well during a rain break or something, who the West Indies team of the 80s would play, and it's a hard one to pin down. I mean, who would you say the first, second of this century?
It's got to be Steve Waugh's Australia side, isn't it?
But in terms of who would they play in the 90s?
There wasn't. I remember, and I remember this vividly because I was a pro at the time. You know, just played, making my way in the first team here at the Oval, and it was the changing of the guard between Mark Taylor's Australia and the West Indies, who was Richie Richardson still captain then? Vivid retired, so it might have been Richie's team. Anyway, so it was when Australia went to the West Indies and beat the West Indies in the West Indies. You know, ended their run of not losing at home. I sort of remember that being billed as kind of like a Test match championship final, and Australia won it. You know, that was the moment the baton was passed from the West Indies to Australia, and Australia didn't relinquish it for a very, very long time after that. That was then. I mean, I don't know in the 2000s, because obviously England beat Australia in 2005 and then got hammered 5-0 in the return game. South Africa were a very, very good team. I would say it was probably Australia, South Africa.
Yeah.
Spanning sort of, I don't know, the 2000, whatever it might be.
The peak of Graham Smith's team. I mean, that was a serious
they were a
South
serious
African
side,
team, wasn't it?
Yeah, and with England perhaps in there as well. Strauss's mob of 10-11 potentially.
Do you reckon the team that you played in towards the end of your career might have qualified for the final? Because there was quite a long run of lots of wins in a row. 2003.
Well, from if you start from Sydney 2003, and go through South Africa, we drew 2-2 at home with South Africa, so that doesn't really count. Then it was Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. We lost 1-0 to Sri Lanka away from home. 2004, we won in the West Indies. I mean, that's kind of in my time in that side. From 2001 onwards, the win in the West Indies was the outstanding one because it's the only time England had done it since the 50s, and no one's done it since. And then of course Ashes onwards. So Ashes 2005 onwards. So I don't think so. I think Australia was still preeminent up until losing the Ashes in 2005. And then, of course, to prove that was a fluke, they stuffed England 5-0 in the return series. Yeah. So, no one had taken it off Australia until Graham Smith's South Africa side later on in that decade, I don't think.
Yeah, it'd been really good to see, I guess, Smith's South Africa against Ponting's Australia when kind of like that Australia-West Indies series, but as one side was improving, the other one on decline. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Taha, you were at Bristol last week. It feels like a long time ago, but you were at the women's test match. India battered valiantly on the final day to avoid defeat. It was a really excellent test.
Yeah, I was there for the first 2 days and really enjoyed it, especially that second day, which kicked off with Sophia Dunkley making her first half-century in international cricket. She was on debut. She played a handful of T20s and finally got the score in the innings we've all been waiting for because she's been tipped for quite a while, and she batted wonderfully. But the day and the test match just belonged to Shafali Verma. I mean, it was basically a privilege being there watching her because you're there. She's played a lot of T20. She's the number one T20 batter in the world. But you felt like that you were there at the start of something really special. She made 96 and 63, and she's 17 years old and she just dominated. I mean, there was during her first innings, I know Catherine Bryant came on, and sort of for a new spell, and I think must have been a new spell, and it was probably the first ball of the over or something like that. And Verma just makes some space and just hits her down the ground over her head for 4. The next ball, she just waits on it, guides it through third man 4, and she played that shot quite a lot in her innings. It was almost like she just a level of premeditation where she knows, she can handle the pace here, and she's just going to guide it and just do whatever she wants. And she was kind of taking the proverbial. And yeah, it was very, very special to be there and watch that. And I wrote after that day that Verma will break record after record, definitively, and then had to say she'll probably make a Test 100. I'd say probably because of the scarcity of women's cricket, so you don't really know how much she's going to play. She'll play against Australia later this year, but who knows what happens. But if India do have this appetite to play Test cricket, women's Test cricket, then that's a boost for every other country.
As Elise Perry told you this week as well.
Well, Elise Perry, I spoke to her last month for an upcoming interview for Wisden Cricket Monthly, and we just talked about her Test record because
it's quite good.
It's phenomenal, but she has only played 8 Test matches in a very long career, and she herself was very modest and said, I've not played that much, so I don't think you should actually look into the stats too much. But the stats are extraordinary, and she's only ever played against England, and so when she plays against India, that'd be special, and it'll be, hopefully we see Perry versus Verma. Perry, arguably one of the greatest against Verma, who's definitely the future.
When I watched Perry in Test cricket, she looks kind of broadly impossible to get out. She's got the shots as well, but she looks like if she wants to stay in, she would stay in for days and days and days.
Yeah.
And Shafali Verma, I mean, the only thing that's going to get her out is herself, really, through either boredom or audacity, going a little step too far. But if you think the limited opportunities that India have had over the last couple of years, it's incredible that still only 17, she's made the progress that she's had. I mean, she's basically played a handful of matches, and yet she's already at the top of the rankings in T20. You'd say, I mean, I haven't seen anyone play a better Test knock in women's cricket than she did last week. Imagine if she actually got to play regular cricket, how good she'd be.
Yeah. I thought. I think it was as we were recording the pod last week. The news broke that the women's test will be played on a used pitch, and something that I enjoyed in the first 2.5-3 days in particular was actually, given the surface, how batters on both sides really went for the result. You saw it on day one, Winfield Hill hitting 2 sixes over the leg side, or I think in the first session. Yeah, and that was kind of the way that both sides top orders batted throughout for the first 3 days at least, which was good to watch.
Yeah, you got that sense from straight away. Like you said, Winfield Hill, she just got 30 something, but it was kind of the innings that set up the day for them. Like, this is where you could tell we're here to win this game. And they've drawn quite a few. The last few test matches they've played have just not been memorable. And they were like, this time we're probably going to make a party out of it. Yeah.
But Sophie Eccleston took 8 in the game. There was a great period. I think the end of the second day. Was it the end of the second day when India collapsed?
Yeah.
Do you think England missed a trick in not playing another spin bowler? I know Sophie Glenn hasn't played Test cricket, but someone like her or one of the left arm spinners in the county game.
For sure. I mean, there is 4 seamers for England is overkill, really, isn't it? You would think, particularly given that there isn't an enormous amount of difference, sort of pace-wise. Nat Siver gets used as a sort of holding bowler anyway, doesn't she? And you got Brunt and Shrubsole, so there was definitely a place for another spinner. Plus, if you're going to make a big deal, the optics of playing on a used pitch were very bad, right? Very, very bad, because it smacks of this isn't as important as the men's game. I get that. There's also mitigation in that, in order to have a pitch that was central enough for the TV cameras, they were limited in terms of the ones that they could use. So the excuses are valid. The optics are awful. However, if you're going to play on a used pitch and then not play 2 spinners, you're kind of you're not taking advantage of what you know already. The pitch is not like the weather. So if there's already scuff marks on it and it's already been used, it's already 3 days old, then the chances are it will take turn and it's not going to do a massive amount for your seam bowlers. So but there was an advantage to be taken in the fact that the pitch was used. And of course, by the end of it, they kind of they ran out of time. The pitch held together fine. I don't think that used surfaces, unless they're unbelievably slow, which this one wasn't, are quite as detrimental to the game as they might be in the men's game, simply because the boys hit it harder, But so there you go. That's how it ended up. England got themselves into a position where they might win the game, and some very, very sparky batting from India stopped that from happening. And all in all, I think it was a pretty good advert for women's Test match cricket. And the more that they play, the more wily and the more streetwise they get, they'll become in terms of being able to take wickets on surfaces where the ball isn't doing a massive amount. But I think all in all, it was a good show.
Yeah, if you've got the leg spinner and a very good one in Sarah Glenn, player apps. I mean, the picking George Elwes, who batted at 7, didn't bowl many overs above the leggy, baffling really. And Sarah Glenn can bat as well. I don't think they'd have lost much on the batting, and they'd have gained a lot on the bowling. A very strange pick.
20 wickets. There was that stat, wasn't it, on the radio? 140 women's Test matches, and only 6 times in the 140 of 40 wickets fallen in the course of the game. Teams do not get bowled out in women's cricket. So if you have a leg break bowler, somebody who does something a little bit different, then you'd even sacrifice a bit of batting for it, because it doesn't seem to be a problem. There is no issue in terms of getting bowled out twice in women's cricket. So you've got to do everything you can to give yourself the armoury to try and take those 40 wickets.
I think there's also an argument. I spoke to Gareth Breese when I did a piece on Sophie Eccleston a couple of months ago, and he talked about not only is Test cricket good in itself, but it also helps the bowlers to develop their skills in other formats. So Sarah Glenn is a hugely exciting talent. This seemed like a good opportunity for her just to have a bowl and try out a few more variations than you might in a T20 game where you're more fearful of getting hit. So I think, a missed opportunity in a couple of ways.
England announced a 16-strong squad for the ODI series that begins shortly. There was no room for Danny White, which I guess was the most interesting bit of news, but Lauren Winfield-Hill is in really good touch at the moment. So I guess that is understandable. Moving on, the England men's side contested what I think must have been the lowest key home international in a long time in the men's game. I think you had the World Test Championship final still going on. You had a really, really fun night in the Euros as well.
I have to confess, I didn't watch a huge amount of this game.
and then you had England Sri Lanka that within 40 minutes it looked pretty clear which way that was going and in the manner in which it was going in that direction as well.
Livingston bowled tidily.
He did bowl well.
He did bowl well. That I watched.
Yes, England did win by 8 wickets. The second game of the series, by the way, will probably have happened or is happening by the time you get to listening to this. It's live on BBC Two actually. So you've got that to look forward to, or you might have already watched it. But yeah, a few things to pick out from it. Butler's really good. He scored an unbeaten 68. He now averages over 50 with a strike rate of over 150 when opening in T20 cricket, and that's now from 20 innings. So that's a pretty good sample size.
Yeah, I swear that stat's been the same for quite a while now.
Yeah, but he just played more games.
More innings, basically.
And then from Joe, as you mentioned, Livingston playing was interesting in itself, and then him bowling a couple of overs was quite interesting and doing well with 2 overs.
Yeah, he offers a lot. I'd be amazed if he's not in the squad for the T20 World Cup, and I think he's pushing for a starting place. If potentially, I mean, Stokes obviously has to come back in. You'd look at the side and you'd say Stokes comes in for Livingston, but don't want to go down the David Milan route really, but there is potential. Stokes could drop in at 3 and then you play Livingston at 6 and you've got an extra spin option, especially if you're not going to play Moeen Ali. That's quite a nicely balanced side for me. I wouldn't be surprised if come the start of the T20 World Cup, that's what Morgan's looking at.
And Chris Woakes back for the first time in 6 years with a new ball. He almost wrote off his own T20 World Cup prospects.
Yeah.
But
I feel like you've been his kind of life coach here.
Yeah. He might need a good old lie down though. He might not see him for another 4 months now. I mean, really? Just.
Well, the rest of the world are good.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the bizarre thing is, England have been able to put out perhaps the strongest team that they've possibly been capable of picking since the first test in Chennai. Would that be fair?
Yeah, no, genuinely, I thought it was
for a T20 series against Sri Lanka at home.
This is a bit of a Joe. You made the point before we started recording that Morgan has said that he's going to look to rotate the 15 people or 16 people in this squad. One thing that I thought was quite interesting is that, bit of a side point, but if you look at this ICC events calendar for the next 10 years, there's a major white ball tournament literally every single year from now to 2031. That's as long as the schedule goes. So you're not actually going to get a period like you had between 2015, 16 and 2019 where you can quite confidently put in youngsters, knowing that if it doesn't quite work out for them or a group of young players, you've got time to replace them, bring other people back in, etc. So I think you kind of have to use series like this to bring people through. I do think it is a bit of a missed opportunity, given that you do have injury concerns with Archer and Wood. You do have form concerns with Tom Curran and Chris Jordan. I know that Saqib and Reece Topley are injured, but this was quite a good opportunity to bring in maybe someone like Tamar Mills or Matt Parkinson's not in the squad. I think it is a bit of a missed opportunity given how much England dominated that first game. I mean, maybe by the time this England have lost the second game.
Sorry, Carl, you go.
We're just in a. I mean, it's just when the squad announcements came through for the both of these series, I just feel like we're in a weird place with this England white ball side where, if you think about straight after that World Cup when they had that 5-match T20 series in New Zealand and they were obviously understandably resting a lot of players, and you see all these young guys giving a go, Tom Banton, Parkinson, Mahmood, Pat Brown, quite a few kids basically getting a go, and we're now at this stage where it's like the tried and tested guys. I mean, there are most of that team is over the age of 30. I think there's like 4 guys in the squad for the ODI series, I think, who are under 30. I mean, there's little experimentation and like just playing it almost too safe, where it's like, I don't think you need to, like you're saying, I think this is the opportunity where you can experiment a little. I mean, we'll already kind of know what that T20 team is probably going to be. But yeah, I'm just sort of trying to understand what the thinking is right now. And for me, it's almost too safe. You know, I think there's got to be still a level of looking to the next 50 over World Cup, and I mean, do you really think that's going to be, you're going to have that exact same team basically from 2019 in 2023? I mean, obviously there'll be one or two fewer players, but it's almost like they're really putting an incredible amount of trust in the existing setup that's done a lot, and understandably they're still doing it, but I'm thinking, when is that transition period actually going to happen now? Because I kind of thought it would already be happening.
I just think from a pragmatic point of view, if you have injuries to key players, I think you want the people who step in to have more international cricket behind them. Matt Parker still has only played very few international games for England, and if he is the next best wrist spinner in the country, you want him playing more games before possibly stepping in for Rashid if Rashid does get injured. I thought from a Sri Lanka point of view, in a game, a few positives. I thought Hasaranga bowled really well. He's been talked up by Mickey Arthur for quite a long time now, but it's good to see him bowl like that. Talking of blooding in new players, Joe, there is a new face in the ODI squad, George Garton, who listeners have probably heard a little bit about. His name's been around for a while. Joe, you spoke to him recently. We'll play a bit of the interview in a minute or two, but it was quite an interesting selection.
It was, and although he's picked for the ODI squad, I think he's been picked because of his T20 performances. That's where he's done brilliantly in the Blast over the last summer and this. And he's got a lot going for him. I mean, he's left arm quick, got that change of angle. He's starting to whack it out the park from kind of the middle order now as well, which is, again, useful. Apparently a very good fielder too. And he got bowls quick. So there's a lot there to work with. I can absolutely see why England are interested in him, and have been for a long time, to be fair. They were interested in him long before he had any records to speak of, and now the numbers are kind of catching up with his potential. I think if he gets a chance against Sri Lanka in the 50 over stuff, and I think he probably will, I think there's an outside chance that he could get in the T20 World Cup squad as the kind of as a spare seamer. If a couple of fall away, there's an injury or two, he's got the 100, he's playing for Southern Brave. There are plenty of opportunities between now and then for him to show how good he is, and I think he might end up just being a little bit short, but I think he's definitely in the conversation.
Butch, you must have seen quite a lot of Garton in the Blast.
Yeah, very handy.
Yeah?
Yeah, very, very handy indeed. Genuinely quick, brilliant fielder, and the batting is coming on leaps and bounds. So yeah, there's a lot to like about him. A lot.
Well, here is that conversation between Joe and Garton, including an interesting anecdote from his first day with the England Ashes squad in 2017. We've had loads and loads of Blast action in the last week since we last recorded, when it's not been raining. I'll run through a couple of the standout performances. Yesterday, Harry Brook and Jordan Thompson put on an all-time record Blast 6th wicket partnership of 141 in just 9.1 overs to help Yorkshire recover from 50 for 5 from 10.5 overs to a final score of 191 against Worcestershire. That was after Worcestershire's Dylan Pennington took a triple wicket maiden. So it's all happening in that game. Samit Patel took figures of 3 for 4 from 4 overs against Worcestershire. A game that featured your moment of the week, Joe.
Yeah, so that was Tuesday night when most of us were watching the next instalment of England's inevitable march to glory. But meanwhile, there was a 10-wicket win for the Outlaws. Chased down their target of 86 in 6 overs at Trent Bridge. So yeah, Samit doing his thing still. But yeah, it was Alex Hales I wanted to pick out. We haven't spoken about him for at least 3 weeks. But he just keeps doing it. He hit 96 not out from 50-odd balls against Durham a week or so ago. And then he didn't have as many to chase, but he smashed a, I think, 18 ball half century to see off their target against Worcester. He's averaging 47 in the Blast this season, striking at 184. Look, I think we know by now where England and Morgan stand on Hales. I don't think he's going to be playing in the T20 World Cup, but I do think a date for your diary is worth penciling in. July 29th, Owen Morgan's London Spirit take on Alex Hales' Trent Rockets at Lords. It'll be live on the telly. As I say, he's not going to get in the T20 World Cup squad, I don't think, but it'll be a chance for Hales to prove a point, to make life a bit awkward for Owen Morgan, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a few in that game. Yeah,
it is very interesting. We've reached an interesting phase of the competition, I guess, where some sides have lost players to England. So I'll quickly run through what the tables look like at the moment. In the North Group, the top 4 sides are Yorkshire, Notts, Birmingham and Durham. In the South Group, Kent, Sussex, Surrey and Gloucester occupy the top 4 slots at the moment. Zach Hawley's going very well for Kent at the minute. I think he'll break into the England T20 side in the next 2 or 3 years. I think he's an absolute gun T20 bat. So yeah, he's obviously quite good.
Apropos of nothing. A question nobody asked.
I just thought it was worth remarking.
He might well do.
Taha, you were impressed by a Somerset youngster yesterday in a game that saw Jack Leach make his long-awaited T20 debut.
I
in
missed that.
Somerset.
He played, did he?
3 for 28.
Yeah, of course it
28.
was. Of course he could do it.
While New Zealand were wrapping up the World Test Championship final, Jack Leach was just coming on to bowl. So pick your headline there.
Yeah.
Young Will Smee, 19 years old, been talked about quite a bit. Really highly rated at Taunton. A few years ago when he was 16, he played a second 11 game and batted with Trescothick, who was 42 at the time, and they both hit centuries. And so I've remembered his name since then. And he was back with James Hildreth yesterday against Surrey, who are a very different side when they've lost their England players. And he was cruised it, 42 of 29. One to keep an eye out for, I reckon.
Absolutely. In the Rachel Hayho Flint Trophy, the Vipers, Diamonds and the Sparks have all got 3 wins from 4 at the top of the table. A couple of really good games from the latest round. The Diamonds beat the South East Stars in a bit of a thriller. They chased 250, 7 down in the last over, having been 70 for 5. Dutch international Stair Callis hit 76, and they were half centuries down the order from Jenny Gunn and Beth Langston to see the Diamonds home. And there's also a narrow win for the Thunder over the Sparks. Thunder winning that by only 2 wickets after Eve Jones carried her bat for the Sparks with an unbeaten 100 earlier in the game. Elsewhere, South Africa beat West Indies in the second and final test of that series. The most entertaining bit from that match, I think, it's got to be the Keshav Maharaj hat-trick on the final day that saw Wian Mulder take an amazing catch at leg slip rather to seal the hat-trick. That's been a nice, entertaining, quite low-scoring series there. Before we go on, a plug for the Wisden Summer Party Pack. This contains 10 cans each of the afternoon session pale ale and the Little Wonder amber ale. Also includes 6 etched glassed Wisden tankards and a full set of 48 Wisden Cricketer of the Year beer mats. For a limited time only, you can pick all of that up for $79.99, which is a saving of over £100. Head to wisden.com/shop. Related to just Wisden Cricketers of the Year, it reminds me of a stat that we found a couple of months ago. Butch, do you know you're the holder of the record of the most England Test caps without being a Wisden Cricket of the Year?
No.
Wow.
It's an outrage. We start a petition.
Either commiserations or congratulations. I'm not sure which way it is. And finally, we've got a couple of really interesting interviews lined up. This week is Yorkshire Tea National Cricket Week, an initiative run with the charity Chance to Shine that aims to spread the power of cricket in schools and communities. It is a week of themed activities that aims to help children and young people learn and grow through the game. Yorkshire Tea work with Chance to Shine because they believe grassroots cricket makes a proper difference, and they are proud to inspire thousands of children each year. Yorkshire Tea National Cricket Week has been taking place this week. Yorkshire Tea National Cricket Week is an initiative for the charity Chance to Shine, which aims to spread the power of cricket in schools and communities. The week sees a range of themed activities put on to inspire children and help them to reconnect with classmates and teammates across England, Scotland and Wales. Yorkshire Tea believes that grassroots cricket makes a proper difference and is proud to inspire thousands of children each year through Yorkshire Tea National Cricket Week. National Cricket Week helps children across the country to play and learn through cricket, often with the help of some famous faces from the game. It's a celebration of the game and aims to inspire children to take part in cricketing activities. It also is a chance to showcase the work that Chance to Shine does in bringing the game to hundreds of thousands of children each year. Last year, the pandemic meant that we had the first ever virtual National Cricket Week, consisting of 5 days of video sessions with international cricketers led by Mark Wood and Heather Knight. The challenges for teachers, parents and children range from strictly come catching to baking cricket ball cupcakes. This year, They're back on the road. In 2021, Yorkshire T National Cricket Week will inspire children and help them to reconnect with friends and classmates through the values of teamwork and togetherness. They'll be visiting Yorkshire, Birmingham, Liverpool, Edinburgh and Cardiff. Plus, there'll be 5 days of virtual challenges with Heather Knight. Get involved throughout the week using the hashtag National Cricket Week. Chance to Shine's latest impact report shows that 55% of children are not getting the activity they need each day, and only 47% play a team sport during a year. Lockdown has also had a profound effect. 16% of children in 2020 had a mental health issue, compared to 10% in 2017. 74% of young people surveyed by Barnardo's found it hard to maintain friendships during lockdown. So how can cricket help? Quite simply, by having a positive effect on the physical, mental, personal and social well-being of young people. 84% of Chance to Shine sessions engage those less likely to stay active or play sport outside of school, whilst 88% of teachers agreed children have developed their teamwork skills. The sport also builds resilience and self-esteem, a vital tool as we get young people back on their feet. If you want to donate to Chance to Shine, head to chancetoshine.org/donate. All donations to the charity are currently being doubled by charity patron Adrian Beecroft. Earlier this week, I spoke to a group of people who've seen what Yorkshire T National Cricket Week and Chance to Shine do firsthand. First, I spoke to Clive Madison, the head teacher at Ravenswood Primary School in Newcastle, and James Morgan, who's been coaching at Ravenswood, about the impact the coaching sessions there have had.
Clive, you're a head teacher at Ravenswood Primary School in Newcastle. Tell us about how your school got involved with Chance to Shine in the first place.
Yeah, sure, yes. We played cricket all the time I've been here. I've been here for 35 years, believe it or not. And so in that time, there's always been competitive cricket played here. But when Chance to Shine came along, it was really obvious for us to get involved with that. That extended our provision of cricket from a competitive element, which we used to teach sort of with the older children from 9 to 11 years old, all the way down to, 6 and 7 year olds now who get a real introduction to cricket as a sport through Chance to Shine, teaching them cricket skills which they can then develop as time goes on. Yeah, there's definitely an interest in cricket, just raising the profile of the game. But actually, a lot of the work.
How old are the kids involved, and what are you trying to get out?
Yeah, so it's an interest in cricket. That's the first thing. So it does two things. It gets them seeing cricket as a sport, seeing something that they're interested in. It also gets them working with a professional, so which is always great for children of that age to see somebody who's from the local club and from the county, and that gets that interest. We try and signpost the youngest children to local clubs, get them interested in playing competitively, and we get a huge knock-on from that as the children get older. If they're already playing in clubs, they tend to want to be in the teams, and then their mates see them playing and their standards good, and so they aspire to be as good as those children. And it has a huge knock-on in that we've got a little factory of cricketers coming through school, boys and girls, with both the interest and the basic skills for them to be involved.
So James, from a coaching perspective, what do the sessions look like? What are they designed to do?
In simple terms, really, every session that I set out to do in a school, I try to get every child in that session to hit as many balls as possible, catch as many balls as possible, throw as many balls as possible. So the way that looks is it's different every single time, really. We'll make sure we definitely get the teachers involved for multiple reasons, really. One being it helps the session run a lot smoother. If you can trust a teacher to go off with a group of kids on the other side of the field or the yard and run a little mini activity with them, it just means more people are doing more things for more of the session, which is what you want, really. But also, as Clive was alluding to before, it helps to build that cricket culture in school, so the staff are really confident in delivering things on their own as well. So when I'm not there, cricket can still happen within school. And as Clive said, cricket is very much the vehicle for all of the things we're trying to draw out of those sessions. So we work on a system of, we call them the cogs really. So we try to make sure there's a physical element to every session, a social element, health and fitness, cognitive, creative, and a personal element to it as well. And it's one of those where we try to make sure we draw out all of those in every session. Some are a lot easier than others. The physical element is pretty obvious. That's the cricket skill itself, and the health and fitness, as long as they're moving about. But it's how can you try and stimulate them in as many ways as possible to improve their skills socially, cognitively, etc. as well. So we'll generally work with the school for about 6 weeks or so, and follow a loosely set program as such, which you adapt to each school and each session as you see fit as a coach. But they're very much aligned to the national curriculum outcomes of the school. Try to make every session as inclusive as possible, so everyone's achieving something within that session. You might have a really broad range of people within any session. You might have some SEN children in classes and things like that. So the range of abilities might be really, really different. So you've got to try and find a way to make sure everybody achieves something, which is, more challenging on some days than it is other days. But you try to find a way. And the way that we try to do that is through personal bests. So it's not about comparing yourself to your mate or comparing yourself to the person on the other team. It's about, can you do better today than you did last week? Okay, you took 10 catches last week, did you? Right, brilliant. Let's do 15 catches today. And see if they can just get better week on week, really. I think one of the things that you do get, especially when you're working with the younger ones, is a lot of them, especially I'm sure Clive will agree, the area of Newcastle we work in, there might not be a massive knowledge of cricket in general from the kids already when they begin. So a lot of them you might start, and some of them have got no idea what cricket is, what it looks like, and things like that. So you've got to make sure that their first taste of the game is a memorable one, and one that they want to continue with. And then on the other hand, you might have people who've got a bit of knowledge of it, and the knowledge they have might be the bits they've seen on the telly, where it's 11 blokes standing about in whites for 7 hours a day, not really doing much. So it's how can we almost make them realise that, no, cricket isn't always like that. You can play cricket and you can have fun, you can be active, you can smash balls all over the place and make it the funnest hour of your week. And it's amazing how quickly kids will be like, oh, I love cricket. I didn't know what cricket was, but now that I've played it, now that I've seen it, I really, really like this. And as Clive says, you see that, you can almost see the result of that by those who go on to do it outside of school, whether that be in a club setting or a community setting.
Probably the biggest thing in my time over at Ravenswood has been the difference in the girls. So getting the girls, we've always got the girls involved, but the enthusiasm from the girls is really kicking in now, particularly with what the girls are seeing the women do in the sport. And we've got a cracking little girls team at the moment here, which is great to be able to see them move forward as well. So boys have always been involved. Those girls are really getting to that standard now where they're playing and beating the boys at times as well. So big positives from the programme.
I also spoke to Izzy Wong, one of the most exciting young quick bowlers in the country, about her winter, her start to the season, and her experience of Chance to Shine as a kid, which really wasn't that long ago.
I think it's been really good, actually. I think we probably last season as
You've started the season really well. You're 1 point off the top of the league. You've got the second most wickets in the league at the time of recording. How do you feel the season's gone so far? Obviously, that sounds very good. How's it felt for you?
Which is good, our first game against Diamonds. To kind of get over the line in a game like that, first game of the season, you're thinking, right, well, this is something here. And then to kind of continue that form against the Storm and the Vipers was really nice.
You were the senior England side in New Zealand over the winter. What was that experience like for you at such a young age?
It was crazy, actually. It was really, really amazing. I think it was just, I'm just so grateful for that opportunity I had with them, really. Learning off those guys, there's so much experience in that dressing room. To just tap into that and kind of sponge as much knowledge as you can out of them was, opportunity that I'm like I said earlier, really grateful for. It was a really good trip, actually. Obviously, 2 series wins, happy days really. New Zealand as a country is amazing. There wasn't any COVID. Cricket wise, it was so good to kind of be training in and around them, and then be in the team meetings, listen to how they're preparing, plans for individual batters, individual bowlers, and then on a game day, kind of how they're going about their business, in as a camp, and how that works in and around the playing 11, because obviously there's a lot more than just the 11 guys that are on the pitch, and how the guys that hadn't been selected were around the playing 11, and making sure that they could contribute in whatever way possible to getting those 2 series wins. So it was really, it was an incredible experience, and I think the friends I made with the girls out there as well, the relationships I think I formed was, it was a really good opportunity for me to just kind of have that no pressure environment and just learn as much as I can about myself and about the way they kind of do things as a team.
Do you feel like you're a better bowler for the experience of going away with the England squad over the winter?
Definitely. I think I feel, certainly from last year, I feel like I'm in a completely different place with, all round, but, especially with my bowling. I think how much of that is New Zealand? I think there's a number of factors. Obviously, you learn from last season. And obviously, we worked hard this winter, the spark. So I think it's a combination of factors, but almost certainly, it was, I feel having had those conversations with the senior bowlers, I feel a lot clearer going into what I'm doing, especially at the end. I was always quite settled on what I was doing at the top of the game, in the power play and stuff like that. But I think coming back, and I've bowled a bit more this season in kind of later spells, in the middle overs or at the death and 50 overs, and then we've had a couple of 100 ball practice games, T20s and stuff I've bowled at the end as well. And I just feel a lot clearer, and I think that clarity has been really good. I think the game against Diamonds, I think I didn't bowl that well, but I got a few wickets at the end just because I was really clear in what I was trying to do. And I was clear, right, I'm going to bowl this. This is where I want my fielders. Oh, look, I've got 3 catches, 4 catches. Like, I've not bowled well, but I think that clarity is, something that is really, really invaluable, actually.
I'm right in saying that you were a participant of Chance to Shine when you were younger. Is that right? Cool. What are your memories of that? How did you get involved?
So I had already played cricket in an after-school club at school, kind of, tennis ball stuff. Really enjoyed it. Chance to Shine came in when I was in year 4. So it's actually, my teacher at the time was, do you know Marie Kelly? She's one of the, she's on number 3 at Sparks. Well, it's her mum. Her mum was my primary school teacher at the time. So Mrs. Kelly, and we arranged, we had Chance to Shine come in, Danny Maskell, I think it was, and I'd already kind of played cricket, so I was already really keen, and it was really just my whole class was involved with it, and it was great, and it was all my mates that probably didn't play cricket, and to actually be able to share something that I enjoyed with them was great fun. That's all I remember at the time, and I think we had like 4 weeks of it maybe, and then we went off and played in a competition against other schools at, I think it was at Knoll Village Cricket Club, and it was great fun. I think everyone in my class just loved it. And that's probably the one of the experiences, I think, in primary school where I can vividly remember everyone taking part and everyone enjoying it. I think, there's always, not everyone's done this, but everyone was really keen to get involved with cricket. And then, I think we had 2 or 3 teams go off to this competition. There's only 30 of us 60 of us in my year. So, I think we all just really enjoyed it. And to get outside and in the playground and, learning all sorts of things. And it's not just cricket, it's, how to get on with your teammates, how to communicate with each other. And, for me, someone who'd played a little bit, like how can I help the guys that maybe haven't done anything at all? And even if it's like, just hold it with 2 hands and stand sideways, it's not high level stuff, but it was so enjoyable at the time and I just loved it. And I think it kind of nurtured my love for the game, so to speak. And I think it was that year that I went off and played like proper club cricket, so it really just pushed me on, I think. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, obviously, and yeah, here we are.
Yeah, so how important do you think it was for you in terms of developing your love for the game?
really important. I think, the stuff I'd done up to then had just like it'd been really fun. And like had, I really loved cricket, I think, by that stage, but to play it in class and, have that, this is fun, we're going to compete against other people, but, it's fun, we're going to learn, and everyone was involved. I think that was the thing that was, like cricket, like everyone can play cricket, like my whole year's playing cricket, like wow, like this is amazing, like everyone's playing cricket, like why not just do this for the rest of my life? Like I think it was really just exciting for me as, what was I, 10, 9, 10, to be 9 and 10 to get pulled out of lessons to go and play cricket in the playground, like who's not enjoying that? So I think it was really important, and I think there's a whole number of factors that have got me to where I am right here, but I think Chance to Shine was so important to actually teach you like the lessons of cricket, not just, technically, because I think that a lot of the stuff I'd done before was not technically, but like, this is how you hit the ball, this is how you catch a ball, this is how you throw a ball, whereas kind of Chance to Shine came along and it was like, okay, like this is how you hit a ball, but like this is how you engage with other people on a team, and this is how you do this, and then we're going to create a team and go and play against other people. I think that was, really important.
And then finally, I've been told that your mum is still a close supporter of Chance to Shine. What do you think it means to your family?
Yeah, so my mum she's written a couple of books. She's incredible one. She's written a couple of books for Chance to Shine. I'm not sure there are any up here. I was going to show you. But basically to kind of engage, to join up cricket and literacy. So the guys, there might be people like me that loved cricket doing Chance to Shine, but, might necessarily not engage with the reading or the literacy aspect. And there might be guys that love reading, but don't like cricket. And there are kind of cricket books about, kids who've done Chance to Shine, and really saying that, okay, like Chance to Shine, like cricket's great and reading's great. Let's bump them together, and let's try and encourage people that like cricket to read and people that like reading to play cricket. And so, I think that's something she really enjoys doing. She's done a couple more books with Middlesbrough Football Club, actually, on getting kids that play football into reading, and kind of especially that is helping the kids go from, so Middlesbrough do a thing where they have a coach in their primary school that comes in and teaches them football, and then that same coach comes into their secondary school the year later, so when they go from year 6 to 7, and it's all about kind of helping that transition. So I think, my mum she's done some fantastic work with kind of helping people play sport and helping people read, and I think Chance to Shine is, she's been quite involved with that for a couple of years, both her and my dad, I think to see, the Chance to Shine project going so well it means a lot to us as a family. I think we love cricket, and my mum, she's pretty good at writing books, so she's taken that opportunity, and I think she's really enjoyed kind of working with Chance to Shine and seeing the difference that they're making, because there's so many kids playing cricket now. It's crazy. I coach my local cricket club on a Friday. I was the only girl that had ever played there when I was 8, 9. I just played with the boys, loved it because I love cricket. Now I go down there and there are 55. I think we've got 55 girls in the girls section, and that's before we count all stars and dynamos, whatever. And some of them are there because they love cricket. Some of them are there because they love spending time with their mates, and their mates play cricket. So like, why can't I play cricket? And I think that kind of, I think so many of them have done Chance to Shine. They've played cricket with their friends, and they've realised actually, this is a great way to spend time with my friends. And down there at the cricket club on a Friday night, and there's 55 girls. If you told me that 10 years ago, I'd probably laughed at you. So I think it is evident that you can the work that Chance to Shine is doing, and it's just so exciting for us as a family, really.
And that is everything from today's show. Cheers, Joe. Cheers, Taha. Cheers, Butch. This has been the Wisden Cricket Weekly Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we'll be back next week. Cheers.